I know for a fact that you heard it a million times: eat your vegetables. If you want to be healthy, eat your vegetables. Yeah, well, all those people that tell you that, I'm going to show you that vegetables are not that great. Primarily because they slow digestion, they impair absorption, they don't have all the essential amino acids, and many other things. So stick till the end and make up your mind on this matter. So we will go through the foundations of nutrition, macronutrients and micronutrients. But before that, Happy New Year! I hope you spent a wonderful time with your family. I hope you had a great year, and I hope that this year will bring loads of surprises and joy. So, nutrition is more than just eating healthy. It's about supplying your body with the right tools at the right time, in the right amounts, to support performance, recovery, and long-term health. To understand how to eat like an athlete, we need to start with the foundations of nutrition and then connect them to what science actually shows. So what is nutrition? Nutrition is the science of how food interacts with the body. It covers how we consume, absorb, use, and store energy and nutrients to support basic survival, training, adaptation, and performance. As explained in Harper's Illustrated Biochemistry, Miri et al., nutrients don't just fuel workouts. They are involved in hormone production, muscle contraction, nerve signaling, immune function, and tissue repair. In other words, nutrition is not only about calories, it's about how food supports every system that allows you to train, compete, and recover. Nutrients are compounds that the body needs to function properly. These include macronutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, fats, micronutrients, vitamins and minerals, and water. They directly contribute to energy production, structure, like muscle and bone, and regulation, enzymes, hormones. Non-nutrients are compounds found in foods that are not essential for survival, but can still influence health and performance. This includes polyphenols, flavonoids, phytochemicals, and certain plant compounds often labeled as anti-nutrients. Here's where the science gets interesting. Petrosky, Weston, and Minnick 2020 reviewed so-called anti-nutrients like phytates and oxalates and found that in real-world diets, these compounds are often misunderstood. Rather than being purely harmful, many plant compounds have protective and regulatory roles. This idea is supported by Scarborough et al. 2005, who showed that polyphenols act not only as antioxidants but also influence inflammation, blood flow, and cellular signaling, all relevant to athletes. So while nutrients are essential, non-nutrients can still enhance performance and health, especially when consumed through whole foods. So what are essential nutrients? Essential nutrients are those the body cannot produce in sufficient amounts, meaning they must come from the diet. These include essential amino acids, essential fatty acids, omega-3 and omega-6, and most vitamins and minerals. Without them, performance, recovery, and health decline rapidly. Non-essential nutrients are compounds the body can synthesize on its own, like certain amino acids, but that doesn't mean dietary intake isn't useful for athletes under heavy training stress, and the generous production may not always meet demand. This distinction matters because it explains why food quality and variety matter, not just hitting calorie targets. Speaking about calories and energy, a calorie is a unit of energy, specifically how much energy food provides to the body. But energy balance is more complex than most fitness myths suggest. Hall et al. 2012 explained that energy balance includes energy intake, resting metabolic rate, thermic effect of food, physical activity, adaptive metabolic responses. Later, Hall and Guo 2017 showed that diet composition affects how the body uses calories, not just how many calories are eaten. For athletes, this means that protein, carbohydrates, and fat ratios can influence muscle retention, recovery, and metabolic efficiency, not just body weight. Calories matter, but how those calories are packaged matters just as much. The Institute of Medicine 2003 created dietary reference intakes, DRIs, to guide the nutrient intake for health. These are not performance targets, but they provide important baselines. Key DRI terms: EAR, estimated average requirement, intake that meets needs of about 50% of people. RDA, recommended dietary allowance, intake sufficient for approximately 97 to 98% of people. AI, adequate intake, used when RDA isn't established, and UL, tolerable upper intake level, maximum safe intake. For athletes, DRIs are a starting point, not an end point. Heavy training increases nutrient turnover, sweat losses, and tissue repair needs, meaning athletes can often require more than sedentary individuals, while still respecting ULs. Moving on to nutrient density. Nutrient density refers to how many vitamins, minerals, and beneficial compounds a food provides relative to its calorie content. Juwinowski 2009, developed the Nutrient-Rich Foods Index, showing that foods like fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, dairy, and whole grains deliver more nutrients per calorie than ultra-processed foods. For athletes, nutrient-dense foods support recovery, reduce inflammation, improve immune function, help meet macronutrient needs without excess calories. This is why two diets with the same calorie count can produce very different performance outcomes. Let's talk about bioavailability. Bioavailability refers to how much of a nutrient is actually absorbed and used by the body. Changchanlum and Mauen, 2024, compared vitamins from plant and animal sources and showed that absorption can vary significantly depending on the food metrics. Hambridge et al., 2010, further explained that minerals like iron, zinc, and calcium are especially affected by food source, preparation methods, and the presence of enhancers or inhibitors. This connects back to Petrosky et al., 2020. Compounds once labeled anti-nutrients can reduce absorption in isolation, but in balanced diets, their effects are often minimal or offset by other benefits. For athletes, this means food combinations and preparation, like pairing iron-rich foods with vitamin C, can make a real difference. So keep in mind that plant-based foods are very low in bioavailability. So if we have to create a scale of what type of food has the best bioavailability, we will have meat, eggs, and generally animal products. And at the base of the spectrum, we will have plant-based foods. Nutrients don't work alone. Townsend et al., 2023, define nutrient synergy as the interaction where nutrients enhance each other's effects. Examples include vitamin D improving calcium absorption, carbohydrates enhancing protein uptake post-workout, and polyphenols supporting nitric oxide production and blood flow. At the same time, nutrient antagonism exists where excessive intake of one nutrient interferes with another. For example, excess zinc impairing copper absorption. What's important is that Townsend et al. Show that whole foods naturally promote synergy, while isolated supplementation can sometimes disrupt the balance. This idea is backed indirectly by Scarbett et al., 2005, who emphasize that plant compounds work best as part of complex food systems rather than single extracted compounds. So the science is clear across these studies. Calories matter, but quality and composition matter more. Nutrients and non-nutrients both play roles in performance. Absorption, synergy, and food context are critical, and the whole nutrient-dense foods outperform isolated nutrients in most cases. Let's move on to macronutrients. Macronutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, are the backbone of athletic nutrition. They provide energy, build and repair tissues, and regulate countless metabolic processes. While athletes often debate which macronutrient is most important, the science consistently shows that each one plays a distinct and irreplaceable role depending on training demands, intensity, and recovery needs. So first of all, we've got carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are often divided into simple and complex, based on their chemical structure and how quickly they are digested. Simple carbohydrates include sugars like glucose, fructose, and sucrose. Complex carbohydrates include starches and fiber, found in foods like grains, legumes, and vegetables. Grill et al., 2006, explained that this distinction matters not because simple carbs are bad, but because complex carbohydrates usually come packaged with fiber, vitamins, and minerals, while many simple sugars do not. Ferretti and Mariani, 2017, backed this up by showing that dietary patterns high in refined simple sugars are strongly associated with overweight and obesity, whereas carb sources rich in fiber and structure are not. So keep in mind that most of these studies are done on people who don't train. We, the people who train, have special needs depending on what activity we do. For athletes, this means simple carbs can be useful around training for quick energy, and complex carbs are essential for daily fueling and recovery. So we've got sugars, starches, and fiber. Sugars provide rapid energy. Starches break down more slowly into glucose. And the fiber is not digested for energy but plays a major role in gut health and metabolic control. Dietary fiber comes in two main forms. Soluble fiber, which slows digestion and helps regulate blood glucose. Insoluble fiber, which supports gut motility and digestive health. Although fiber doesn't directly fuel exercise, its role in long-term metabolic health is critical. This is supported indirectly by Livesey et al., 2019, who showed that diets with lower glycemic impact, often higher in fiber, reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes. Let's not forget that us athletes are predisposed to have fewer problems with blood glucose due to the body's high demand for glucose. Unlike normal people, we athletes need glucose and our body will use it, but don't overdo it, of course. Let's establish the difference between glycemic index and glycemic load. The glycemic index, GI, ranks carbohydrates based on how quickly they raise blood glucose levels. The glycemic load, GL, goes one step further by considering portion size. According to Livesey et al. 2019, higher dietary GI and GL are causally linked to increased risk of metabolic disease. Wikipedia's GI overview summarizes this concept well, but Livesey's paper provides the real scientific backbone, showing that repeated high glucose spikes stress insulin regulation over time. For athletes, high GI carbs can be useful during and immediately after training. Lower GI carbs are better for baseline meals and metabolic stability. Once consumed, carbohydrates enter metabolic pathways that determine how they are used. Chandel 2021 explains that glycolysis is the pathway that breaks glucose down to produce ATP, the energy currency of muscle contraction. This is the dominant system during high-intensity exercise. When carbohydrate intake is low, the body can create glucose through gluconeogenesis, mainly from amino acids and glycerol. Melkonian et al. 2023 described this as a survival mechanism, not an optimal performance strategy. This explains why chronically low diets can impair high-intensity performance. The body can make glucose, but at a cost. One important thing to keep in mind is that the brain, eyes, and kidneys are dependent on glucose since they rely a lot on it, so acute hypoglycemia can damage them. The brain, for example, requires approximately 120 grams of glucose per day. Moving on to proteins. Proteins are made of amino acids, which fall into three categories. Essential amino acids, or EAAs, must come from the diet. Non-essential amino acids, the body can make them, and conditionally essential amino acids, normally synthesized but required from food during stress, injury, or heavy training. The Institute of Medicine, 2006, established baseline amino acid requirements, but later research suggests that these may underestimate athletic needs, especially during intense training or energy deficits. Werer et al. 2023. So let's look at complete versus incomplete proteins. Complete proteins contain all essential amino acids in sufficient amounts, while incomplete proteins do not. However, Aronson-Lance et al. 2024 showed that when total protein intake is adequate, meals built from complementary or even incomplete proteins can still stimulate the muscle protein synthesis similarly to complete proteins. This supports Calves et al. 2024, who argue that protein quality matters, but total intake and overall dietary pattern matter just as much. Also keep in mind that plant-based foods generally don't have all the amino acids our body needs, so in a way they are incomplete proteins. Also something good to keep in mind is that without the proper essential amino acids, protein synthesis cannot function properly. So for us athletes to function properly, we need those essential amino acids. So our best choice will not be plant-based foods, but protein from meat and, generally speaking, animal-based products. Moving on to protein digestibility. Protein quality isn't just about amino acid content, it's also about digestibility. PDCAAS, Protein Digestibility Corrected Amino Acid Score, adjusts for overall digestibility, and DIAAS, Digestibility Indispensable Amino Acid Score, measures amino acid absorption at the ileum, making it more precise. Rutherford et al. 2015 demonstrated that DIAAS can differentiate protein quality more accurately than PDCAAS, especially for animal versus plant proteins. This aligns with the educational material from Texas A&M, which emphasizes that not all grams of protein are equal. Let's talk about nitrogen balance. Nitrogen balance reflects whether the body is gaining or losing protein tissue. Mori, 2014, showed that consuming protein, especially combined with carbohydrates, after resistance training improves nitrogen balance. This supports Portmans et al. 2012, who explained that athletes have higher protein turnover, meaning they constantly break down and rebuild tissue. Guin et al. 2020 further showed that essential amino acids, intact proteins, and mixed meals all stimulate muscle protein synthesis, but energy availability strongly influences the outcome. And finally, fats, or also called lipids. Fats are categorized based on their chemical structure. We have saturated fats, monounsaturated fats, and polyunsaturated fats, including omega-3 and omega-6. Hamad et al. 2015 show that fat type, not just fat quantity, influences cardiovascular health. Rivelsey et al. 2003 further demonstrated that replacing saturated fats with monounsaturated and omega-3 fats improves lipid profiles and post-meal fat metabolism. Omega-3 and omega-6 fats are both essential, but they must be balanced. Excess omega-6 intake relative to omega-3 is associated with increased inflammation, while omega-3s support cardiovascular health and recovery. This balance is especially important for athletes dealing with high training stress. Let's talk about trans fats. Trans fats are universally recognized as harmful. Daka et al. 2011 reviewed evidence showing that trans fats increase cardiovascular risk, inflammation, and metabolic dysfunction. Unlike other fats, trans fats provide no performance or health benefit and are best avoided entirely. Cholesterol is often misunderstood. While high blood cholesterol can be problematic, as summarized in the AHA and Wikipedia resources, cholesterol itself is essential for hormone production, cell membrane integrity, and vitamin D synthesis. For athletes, cholesterol intake is less important than overall lipid balance and metabolic health. Fatty acids are broken down via beta-oxidation inside mitochondria to produce energy. Houghton et al. 2016 explained that beta-oxidation is the dominant energy system during low to moderate intensity exercise and long during efforts. This is why endurance training increases mitochondrial density, it improves fat utilization efficiency. However, fat metabolism is slower than carbohydrate metabolism, which explains why fats cannot replace carbs for high-intensity performance, but are essential for endurance and overall energy balance. So across all these studies, a clear pattern emerges. Carbohydrates fuel intensity, proteins drive repair and adaptation, and fats support health, hormones, and endurance. And the final part is micronutrients. Micronutrients, vitamins and minerals, don't provide calories, but they're absolutely essential for athletic performance. They regulate energy production, oxygen transport, muscle contraction, nerve signaling, hydration, bone strength, and recovery. An athlete can eat enough calories and micronutrients and still underperform if micronutrient intake is inadequate or poorly balanced. What makes micronutrients tricky is that both deficiency and excess can impair performance. The studies below consistently show that athletes live in a narrow, optimal zone where intake supports adaptation without drifting into toxicity. Vitamins are organic compounds required in small amounts to support metabolism, immunity, and tissue maintenance. Espinosa Salas and Gonzalez Alias 2023 explained that vitamins mostly act as coenzymes and regulators, meaning they help enzymes do their job but do not provide energy themselves. Vitamins are divided into fat-soluble and water-soluble, and this distinction matters a lot for athletes. Fat-soluble vitamins are absorbed with dietary fat and stored in body tissues. Because of this storage capacity, they are more likely to cause toxicity if overconsumed, a point emphasized by Andres et al. 2024. Vitamin A is essential for vision, immune function, and cell growth. For athletes, immune health is critical during heavy training blocks. However, Andres et al. 2024 highlight that excess vitamin A intake, often from supplements, can impair bone health, which is especially problematic for weight-bearing and impact sports. Vitamin D plays a central role in calcium absorption, bone integrity, muscle function, and immune regulation. Multiple clinical reviews, including Andres et al. 2024 and Espinosa Salas and Gonzalez Alias 2023, show that vitamin D deficiency is common, especially in indoor athletes or those living at higher latitudes. Low vitamin D status has been associated with increased injury risk, reduced muscle strength, and impaired recovery. This is a clear example where deficiency is more common than toxicity, but supplementation still needs to be controlled. Something that isn't much discussed in the athletic world is that vitamin D acts as a steroid to some level. If you watch closely, it kind of has a similar molecular structure and similar negative effects as steroids if consumed in excess. Vitamin E acts as an antioxidant, protecting cell membranes from oxidative damage. English et al. 2025 explained that while vitamin E helps manage exercise-induced oxidative stress, excessive supplementation may blunt beneficial training adaptations. This supports the idea that some oxidative stress is necessary for adaptation, a concept also discussed in broader micronutrient reviews. Vitamin K is essential for blood clotting and bone metabolism. Andres et al. 2024 note that vitamin K works synergistically with vitamin D, reinforcing the idea that vitamins do not act in isolation, a recurring theme theme across micronutrient research. Let's move on to water-soluble vitamins. Water-soluble vitamins are not stored in large amounts and excess is generally excreted in urine. This makes toxicity less common, but deficiencies more likely during periods of high demand. B vitamins 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 12 are easily involved in energy metabolism, red blood cell production, and nervous system function. Espinosa Salas and Gonzalez Ayas, 2023, emphasize that athletes have increased turnover of B vitamins because of higher energy flux. Even marginal deficiencies can impair endurance, coordination, and recovery. Vitamin C supports immune function, collagen synthesis, and iron absorption. English et al. 2025 show that vitamin C deficiency increases fatigue and slows tissue repair. But, similar to vitamin E, high-dose supplementation may reduce training adaptations when used chronically. Again, this reinforces a central theme: adequate intake is crucial, megadosing is not. Classic deficiency diseases, scurvy, rickets, beriberi, are rare in athletes, but subclinical deficiencies are common. According to Espinosa Salas and Gonzalez Arias, 2023, athletes may experience chronic fatigue, frequent illness, poor recovery, and stress fractures. English et al. 2025 back this up by showing that many symptoms attributed to overtraining can overlap with micronutrient imbalances, especially when diets are restrictive or heavily processed. Fat-soluble vitamin toxicity is a real risk. Andres et al. 2024 and Rizak and Wimalawansa 2025 both emphasize that excessive intake of vitamin A and D can lead to bone demineralization, organ stress, and hormonal disruption. For athletes, this is particularly relevant because supplement use is widespread. The science strongly supports a food-first approach, with supplementation targeted only when deficiency is identified. So, minerals. Minerals are inorganic elements required for structural integrity, fluid balance, and neuromuscular function. Unlike vitamins, minerals cannot be synthesized at all. They must come from the diet. Farag et al. 2023 describe minerals as working in tightly regulated systems, where imbalance in one often affects others. Macrominerals are required in larger amounts and are especially important for athletes. Calcium and phosphorus form the structural basis of bone. Calcium also regulates muscle contraction and nerve signaling. Farag et al. 2023 show that inadequate calcium intake increases fracture risk, especially in female athletes and those in energy deficits. Vitamin D status strongly influences calcium absorption, which links mineral and vitamin research together. Magnesium is involved in over 300 enzymatic reactions, including ATP production. Both Farag et al. 2023 and the Merck Manual Overview note that magnesium deficiency can cause muscle cramps, weakness, and impair recovery, symptoms commonly reported by athletes during heavy training. Sodium, potassium, and chloride. These minerals are key electrolytes controlling fluid balance, nerve impulses, and muscle contraction. Athletes lose sodium and chloride through sweat, and prolonged endurance exercise can significantly alter electrolyte balance. Farag et al. 2023 highlight that hydration strategies without electrolytes can be counterproductive, especially in hot environments. Trace minerals are needed in smaller amounts but are no less important. Iron is essential for oxygen transport and energy metabolism. Razak and Wimalawansa 2025 explain that iron deficiency is one of the most common micronutrient issues in athletes, especially endurance athletes and menstruating females. Low iron reduces aerobic capacity long before anemia is diagnosed. Zinc supports immune function, protein synthesis, and hormone production. According to the Merck Manual and Razaki and Wimalawansa 2025, zinc deficiency impairs recovery and increases infection risk, a major issue during intense training phases. Iodine, selenium, copper, and manganese. These minerals support thyroid function, antioxidant defense, and connective tissue formation. Farag et al. 2023 emphasize that while deficiencies are less common, restrictive diets can increase risk, particularly when entire food groups are removed. And finally, electrolyte balance. Electrolyte balance is critical for maintaining muscle contraction, nerve signaling, blood volume, thermoregulation. The Merck Manual Overview clearly states that imbalances, whether from dehydration or overhydration, can impair performance and become dangerous. For athletes, electrolyte balance is dynamic and must adapt to sweat rate, climate, training duration, and individual variability. This is why one-size-fits-all hydration strategies fail, but a good indicator of proper hydration nutrition is a pale yellow urine. Across all these sources, the message is consistent. Micronutrients regulate the systems that macronutrients fuel. Deficiencies impair performance before disease appears. Excess intake, especially via supplements, can be harmful. And nutrients work in networks, not isolation. So with all of this, now you have some basics in nutrition. So you now understand a little bit more foundations of nutrition, macronutrients and micronutrients. And to get to our subject, which are vegetables are not that great for athletes, well, take this into account. Why would I eat something that slows digestion, impairs nutrient absorption, doesn't have all the essential amino acids required, so can't properly do protein synthesis? And that doesn't really provide me what I need. Keep in mind that we have small stomachs and big brains, which means that we need to have something that can be used fast, you know? Yes, this sometimes creates oxidative stress and inflammation. So basically inflammation is created when our mitochondria is highly dosed with glucose. So our body creates inflammation and oxidative stress. What happens is that fiber is slow to digest, and so insulin doesn't have the time to take glucose from the food and get it into all the body and all the cells. So this is why fiber doesn't increase inflammation that much, but it doesn't mean that it's good either. So I'll let you make up your mind. And yeah, this is another new mini-series, Nutrition 101. And yeah, I hope you learned something new today, and we will meet next time for another video. Have a great day, have a great week, and like always, take care.